when I first went, it was 1989, and I became Assistant Secretary of Housing. So I'm a great believer that, the first thing you want to understand about an organization is the laws that describe your scope of work. What's the law? What am I responsible to make sure happens? And then the second thing is, how does the money work? So I read the laws relating to my position, and what they said was that the Assistant Secretary of Housing, Federal Housing Commissioner, has sole fiduciary responsibility for the FHA funds, which means I was legally required to make sure that the laws related to the fiduciary management of the funds happened. So the first thing I said was, I asked the budget officer, I said, can I have our financial statements? He said, well, we don't get financial statements. We get audited every couple of years by GAO. We don't have financial statements. I said, well, we have a budget. He said, yes, we have a budget. I said, okay, so bring me the budget and the budget justifications, which is the detail on the budget in a federal agency. And it went from about the floor all the way up to almost all to the ceiling. And I'm a speed reader, so I read it 4 times. And I called him back in, and the FHA Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund, which is the single family fund, is required by law to be run on a self-supporting basis. That means mortgage insurance premiums have to cover overhead and the cost of defaults. So that was beaten into me. I have sole fiduciary obligations to make sure that it's self-supporting, that the premiums are covering expenses. And I said, nowhere in the budget does it say if we're doing that. It doesn't say how much cash is coming in and how much cash is going out. He said, that's not in the budget. And I said, well, where is that? And he said, well, the accountants have that information, but they report to a different assistant secretary, and you're not allowed to talk to him. Well, to make a long story short, I had raised a lot of money for George H.W. Bush, and what I got was a pair of presidential cufflinks, and the accountants moved over to report to me. It took 2 months of lobbying, but I got the accountants moved over to report to me, and what I discovered was, in the single family fund, we were losing $11 million a day. Now, under the law, our premiums are supposed to cover our expenses, so that meant we were not in, we were operating outside the law yet again. So I said, look, all real estate is local. We have 80 field offices in 10 regions. I need to know where we're losing the money, because I don't know what to do until I know where we're losing the money. And he said, well, we don't keep information by place, so I don't know the answer to that question. And I said, look, we mail out checks. We have zip codes. I need you to do an estimation of cash in, cash out by region and field office. How much cash net are we making or losing by place, field office and region? So went out, emergency crash program, took 2 months. He came back in, and it turns out we were making money in 8 regions and losing more than 100% of that money in 2 regions. And those 2 regions were Region 6 and Region 8. The big region where we're losing the most money was Texas. You had Arkansas and Texas in the same region, so you had the Clintons and the Bushes all in the same. And what you had was significant amounts of financial fraud throughout that region. So this was during the S&L crisis period. So as it turned out, our best regional administrator was in the Texas region. And he was excellent. He had a deputy who was excellent. They were very, very competent. So I picked up the phone and I called them and I said, when I got the first sort of estimations by region, I called them and I said, how much do you guys, I had them on the speakerphone. I said, how much do you guys think you lost last year? And they said, oh, we think we probably broke even. And I said, no, you lost $1 billion in Region 6. They hadn't known. They had no disclosure. They had no feedback. They had no whatever. So I said, okay, I'm going to fax you down these, we were calling them cash flow estimations on your $1 billion of losses. I'm going to fax these down, and I'm flying down tomorrow. Now, what was interesting is, by the time I got there, the regional administrator and deputy had called in all the field office managers, gotten in a smoke-filled room, and had a plan to fix all of it. Okay? So all the losses were going to stop. They absolutely had the power and authority to do it. They just needed the information. Wow. And needless to say, A lot of the Washington lobbyists were not pleased with that result. The day I left FHA, my understanding is all of place-based reporting was canceled like that. It's a lot easier to steal without place-based transparency. If every American got financial statements, just like when I buy a stock, I get an annual financial report from the company that I put money in. We put a lot more money into our government than we put into the stock market. So if every American got a financial statement for their congressional district that showed the sources and uses of how all the federal monies were used in the area that they drive around and understand and know, most of this financial fraud would stop.